In 1861, Union General Winfield Scott initiated a blockade of all the Confederate ports to keep supplies from reaching them. One of these blockades was at the Roanoke River entrance in the Albemarle Sound in North Carolina. The Union blockade used wooden ships. The Confederates decided to build an ironclad warship to attack the wooden ships and free the river of them to allow movement of supplies to the Confederates. It was designed to carry 2 large cannons that were on swivels so that they could fire 360 degrees by using a forward and rear port and 2 ports on each side. There was also a ram built into the nose of the ship. The ship would not be built in a deeper part of the river where the Union could interfere with the construction. They decided to build the ironclad in a cornfield located by the Roanoke River, where it was too shallow for the Union vessels to reach. The construction took more than a year. It was launched in April of 1864 under the command of James W. Cook. Its mission was to clear the river of all Union vessels so that General Hoke's troops could storm the forts located there. The Albemarle left Plymouth and headed to Albemarle Sound to attack the Union ships. 2 paddle steamers, the USS Miami and the USS Southfield, lashed themselves together with spars and chains. Turning back sharply into the river, he rammed the Union Southfield. Albemarle's ram became trapped in Southfield's hull from the force of the blow, and her bow was pulled under as well. The Albemarle was vulnerable, so Commander Flusser of the USS Miami fired an explosive cannonball with a 10-second fuse point blank at it. The cannonball struck the slanted side armor of the Albemarle and bounced back to the Miami, exploding and killing Commander Flusser. When the USS Southfield hit the bottom of the river, it rolled, freeing the Albemarle from its grasp. The Albemarle returned to the surface. The Miami could not make a clear shot at it. The USS Miami was soon driven back. It then steered clear of the ironclad and escaped into Albemarle Sound. The river was high, and they discovered 10 feet of water over the obstructions that the Union forces had placed in the river leading to the forts. Captain Cook immediately ordered steam. By keeping to the middle of the channel, they passed safely over the obstructions. Arriving at the forts, the ironclad's armor protected it from Union guns of the forts. With the river now clear of Union ships, and with the assistance of Albemarle's rifle cannon, General Hoke attacked and took Plymouth and the nearby forts. On May 5th, Albemarle and CSS Bombshell, a captured steamer, were escorting the troop-laden CSS Cotton Plant down the Roanoke River. Albemarle opened fire first, wounding 6 men working the USS Metabesset. 2 100-pounders She was closely followed by the USS Sassacus, which then fired a broadside of solid 9-pound and 100-pound shots, all of which bounced off Albemarle's armor. However, the USS Bombshell, being a softer target, was hit by each heavy shot from the USS Sassacus and was quickly captured by Union forces following her surrender. Lieutenant Commander Francis Rowe of the USS Sassacus, seeing Albemarle at a range of about 400 yards, decided to ram it. The Union ship struck the Confederate ironclad full and square on the broadside, shattering the timbers of her own bow, twisting off her own bronze ram in the process, and jamming both ships together. With the USS Sassacus hull almost touching the end of the ram's Brook rifle, Albemarle's gun crew quickly fired point-blank rifled shells at it. One of them punctured the USS Sassacus boilers, causing live steam to pour through the ship. Sassacus was able to break away and drift out of range. The Albemarle then steamed back up the Roanoke to Plymouth. Albemarle successfully dominated the Roanoke River and the approaches to Plymouth through the summer of 1864. The U.S. Navy considered various ways to destroy Albemarle, including 2 plans submitted by Lieutenant William B. Cushing. They finally approved one of his plans, authorizing him to locate 2 small steam launches that could be fitted with spar torpedoes. Cushing discovered 2 30-foot picket boats under construction in New York and acquired them for his mission. On each he mounted a Dahlgren 12-pounder howitzer and a 14-foot spar with a torpedo attached at the tip of the spar. One of the boats was lost at sea during the voyage from New York to Albemarle Sound. The other boat arrived safely with its crew of 7. On the nights of October 27th and 28th, 1864, Cushing and his team began working their way upriver toward Plymouth under the cover of darkness. As they got closer to the ironclad, they quickly discovered that she was defended against approach by floating logs. The logs, however, had been in the water for many months and were covered with heavy slime. The steam launch rode up and then over them without difficulty with her spar fully against the ironclad's hull at the waterline. Cushing stood up in the bow and pulled the lanyard, detonating the torpedo's explosive charge. The explosion threw Cushing and his men overboard into the water. Cushing's daring commando raid blew a 6-foot-long hole in Albemarle's hull at the waterline. She sank immediately in the 6 feet of water. Below her, she settled into the heavy river-bottom mud. The upper part of the ironclad stayed mostly dry. Confederate Commander Alexander F. Warley, who had been appointed as her captain about a month earlier, salvaged both of Albemarle's rifled cannons and shells to be used to defend Plymouth against subsequent Union attacks. Cushing had stripped off most of his uniform and swam to shore, where he hid until daylight, avoiding the hastily organized Confederate search parties. The next afternoon he was finally able to steal a small skiff, and he began slowly paddling downriver using his hands and arms as oars. He finally reached the Union forces at the river's mouth. Of the other men in Cushing's launch, one man, Seaman Edward Houghton, also escaped, returning to the Union ships. 2 others, John Woodman and fireman Samuel Higgins, were drowned following the explosion and given a military burial. The remaining crew were captured and later released.